Gather your spirits and lend me your ears. Let the smoke of the fire carry your minds back to the days of the ancestors. This is not a story of what is, but a story of what was and what will always be as long as vanity rules the human heart. In a village blessed by the rains and the fat of the land, there lived a maiden named Thandiwe. To look upon her was to look upon the morning sun. Her beauty was a song that every young man wished to sing. But beauty, my friends, can be a heavy burden when it is not balanced by wisdom. Thandiwe's heart had hardened into a stone of pride. She did not see men, she saw flaws. When the brave warriors came to stand before her father, seeking her hand, she would turn her face away. She would whisper to her friends that this one was too short to reach the thatch of the roof, or that one bore the scent of the cattle crowd too heavily upon his skin. She mocked the farmer for his rough hands, claiming they would snag her silk skin like thorns. Her father, a man who had seen many seasons and knew the way of the world, tried to guide her spirit. He would sit her down by the evening fire and tell her that a husband is not a decoration to be worn, but a shelter to be trusted. He warned her that she was only looking at the ox of the corn, ignoring the rot that might lie within. He pleaded with her to choose a man with a kind heart rather than a perfect face. But the ears of the youth are often stuffed with the cotton of arrogance. Andiwe declared to the village that she would settle for nothing less than perfection. She vowed she would only marry a man without a scar, a man who shone like a god among mortals. The spirits, they say, listen to our boast, and sometimes they send a test. It arrived on a day when the sun hammered the earth into submission. A stranger walked out of the deep bush. He was not like the men of the village. He stood as tall as the mountains, his skin smooth and burnished like polished mahogany. There was no mark of the spear on him, no scratch of the thorn. He walked with a silence that made the birds stop singing. He went straight to the compound of Thandiwe's father. Thandiwe looked at him and felt her destiny lock into place. She told her father that this was the one. She declared that her waiting was over, for here stood a prince among men, a being of absolute perfection. Her father looked at the stranger with clouded eyes. He noticed things his daughter did not. He noticed how the village dogs tucked their tails and whined in the dirt. He noticed how the air grew cold around the man. He whispered his fears to his daughter, telling her that they do not know this man's clan, nor his ancestors. He warned her that there was a wildness in the stranger's stillness. But Thandiwe would not hear it. She argued that his perfection was proof of his nobility. She insisted that she would go with him. The marriage was agreed, though the stranger refused to partake in the feast. He told them that these people were waiting and they must leave before the moon rose. He spoke little, and his voice was a rumble that vibrated in the chest. Thandiwe gathered her pots and her blanket. She was ready to leave all she knew for the image of perfection she had found. But she did not go alone. Her younger brother, Sipo, a boy with eyes as sharp as a hawk, insisted on accompanying her. He claimed he wanted to help carry her burden, but in his heart, he wanted to watch the stranger. And so they walked away from the smoke of home, stepping into the vast unknown bush. As the days bled into night, the journey stretched on. The village was swallowed by the horizon, and the bush grew thick and tangled. Tandiwe began to notice that her perfect husband was changing. The change was slow, like the setting sun. She noticed that he never sweat, even when the heat was unbearable. She noticed that the thorns seemed to bend away from his skin, afraid to touch him. One evening, as they camped beneath a skeletal acacia tree, Tandiwe prepared a meal. She offered the stranger a bowl of sorghum porridge, urging him to eat and regain his strength. He looked at the food with a sneer. He told her that he had no taste for the grain of the village. He declared that he would find his own sustenance in the darkness. He walked away from the firelight, disappearing into the shadows. Sipo, suspicious and small, crept after him. He hid behind a termite mound and watched. What he saw made his blood turn to ice water. The boy returned to his sister, trembling like a leaf in a storm. He whispered to her that her husband was not hunting like a man. He told her that the stranger was crouched on all fours, devouring a gazelle raw, tearing at the flesh with teeth that were no longer human. Tandiwe, blinded by her pride, scolded the boy. She told him to hush his foolish lies. She defended her husband, claiming it was simply a strong hunter with the appetite of a warrior. But deep in her belly, a cold stone of fear began to settle. She asked herself why a prince would eat like a beast, but she pushed the thought away. The next day, the disguise wore thinner. The stranger stopped speaking in clear words and began to grunt his commands. Coarse hair began to sprout from his smooth shoulders. When Tandiwe asked him how far they had left to travel, he only growled that they were very, very close. They arrived at last, but there were no royal kraal. There were no cattle lowing in the pen. There was only a dark, gaping mouth of a cave, and the ground around it was littered with the white, sun-bleached bones of those who had been taken before. The stranger stopped and turned to face them. He announced that she was finally home, but as he spoke, the humanities fell from him like dead skin. Tandiwe watched in horror as his back arched and snapped. She watched as his smooth hands curled into massive, deadly paws. His face pushed out, the jaw extending into a muzzle filled with knives. He was no man. He was a lion, an ancient magical beast who wore the skins of men to lure the vain and foolish into his den. He roared a terrible sound that shook the leaves from the trees. He told them that his hunger was great, but that he preferred his meat tender. He announced that he would summon the rest of his pride, and together they would have a feast unlike any other. He shoved Thandiwe and her brother into the darkness of the cave and rolled a great boulder across the entrance, sealing them in with the smell of death. In the dark, Thandiwe's pride finally broke. She felt the damp earth and wept. She confessed her foolishness to the darkness, lamenting that her vanity had led them to their death. But Sipo was not weeping. He was looking up. He saw a silver of daylight high above them, a crack in the rock that the lion had not seen. He urged his sister to stand. He told her that tears would not save them, but courage might. He pointed to the light and told her that if she lifted him, he could climb out and pull her to safety with his sash. They escaped the cave just as the sun began to dip. They ran back the way they had come, their feet flying over the thorns and stones. But behind them, the wind carried a terrifying sound. The lion had returned to find his larder empty. He was coming for them, and he was not alone. They ran until they reached the great river that marked the boundary of the wild lands. But the water was high, swollen with rain, and the current was fierce. And there, blocking their path, lay a massive crocodile, warming himself on the mud. Thandiwe did not command the beast. She did not act like a princess. She fell to her knees in the mud. She addressed the crocodile with the respect due to an elder of the river. She begged him for passage, saying that they were merely foolish children fleeing the teeth of the land. The crocodile, seeing her humility, opened his golden eye. He slid into the water and floated still, offering his armored back as a bridge. They scrambled across, their hearts pounding in their throats. Just as their feet touched the safety of the far bank, the lion burst from the grass on the other side. The beast paced the bank, roaring his fury across the water. He demanded to know why they ran, promising them that he only wished to keep them forever. But Thandiwe called back to him. She told him that she was no longer the girl who loved a false image. She told him that she was going home to her people and that his magic held no power over her anymore. When Thandiwe returned to her village, she was changed. Her fine clothes were torn and her feet were scarred, but her eyes were clear. When the suitors came again, the short warrior, the farmer with the rough hands, she did not turn them away. She greeted them with a smile, for she now knew the value of a human heart. She eventually married a man who had many scars, a man who was not perfect, but who was real. So, remember this tale when you look in the mirror. Do not let pride blind you to the truth, for the smoothest skin may hide the sharpest claws, and the truest love is often found in the roughest hands.